Well, there is a woman on a mission in West Sacramento, and she wants to make housing more affordable for herself and eventually other people too. So how, you might ask? Well, with tiny homes on wheels, and they've been proposed as one solution to the affordable housing crisis. And this woman has been asking the city of West Sacramento to change zoning laws for 2 years now so she can live legally on her own land. Becca Habegger and digital producer Ayana Williams explain what she's fighting for.
What you've seen described as a tiny home likely runs the gamut of shapes and sizes. Some are fairly basic, like these cabins Sacramento County plans on using as shelter for the unhoused community. Others are small-scale luxury, looking from the outside like a traditional home, just tiny.
My tiny home was built back in 2017. I've lived in it for over 5 years now.
33-year-old Robin Davis lives in this 160-square-foot home made out of a recycled shipping container on undeveloped residential property she owns in the city of West Sacramento. No other house on the property, just her tiny home on wheels.
I had lived in what I call my big home, my 1,200 square foot home. 3-bedroom, 2-bath was way too much, and I was just filling it with more and more stuff. And I had watched HGTV, one of those shows, tiny home shows, and I was like, yeah, I could do that.
Small though it is, Davis says she has everything she needs here, except permission.
I'm aware that I'm living illegally due to not meeting the current zoning and code standards. But your standards are out of reach and unaffordable, not just for me, but the majority of the population.
Here she is speaking to the West Sacramento City Council back in November. She's been appealing to the council for about 2 years now, ever since moving her tiny home to this property.
I've been denied a temporary use permit, denied off-grid options, denied affordability, and threatened with notices to abate, while this entire state has a severe housing shortage, lack of shelters, and thousands on our streets living in whatever they can to survive.
She's facing thousands of dollars in impact fees from the city, plus the cost of hooking up her home to city water, sewer, electricity. She currently uses a compost toilet and solar panels.
If you buy a tiny home and the impact fees and all the fees and the site plans, if all that's more than your home, not a lot of people are gonna be motivated to do that. Not a lot of people can do that.
So what exactly is the problem?
I don't really fit into any category right now.
The city has rules for mobile homes and RVs, but Robin's home doesn't fit those categories. The city has rules for accessory dwelling units, or ADUs, which is a second home on a property with an existing primary residence, but Robin's tiny home is the only thing on her property.
We designed her home to live in full-time.
James Roberts owns Tainer, the Sacramento-based company that built Robin's shipping container home and is now moving away from tiny home production and into design and consulting for people looking to build tiny homes.
The demand is absolutely there. I mean, unfortunately, the extreme unfortunate of the fires, and now we have flooding, people are displaced. And so there's the desperation that sets in. Unfortunately, we don't have tiny homes just sitting, waiting for purchase, but obviously it can be built faster. We are designing things as to be kits so that materials can be ordered and shipped to site and then put together in a much faster time frame, obviously, than a traditional house.
He's helping Robin work with the city to adapt her home as needed, trying to find a middle ground so she can live here legally.
But that's the part we're trying to figure out now, is how do we make this round peg, square hole work?
He's hopeful a brand new ordinance that just went into effect earlier this month in Santa Cruz County will help Robin's case in West Sacramento. It allows for the kinds of tiny homes on wheels that Robin has as a primary residence. And now he's hoping the city of West Sacramento will take a look at that and possibly implement it themselves.
A handful of California cities and counties have policies that are generally tiny home friendly, but specifically, Robin would like to see more local governments allow tiny homes on wheels as someone's primary residence.
When she started talking about the small homes, I was very intrigued with her proposal.
West Sacramento City Council member Norma Alcala says she wants to see West Sac become more tiny home friendly for a variety of reasons.
Homelessness is chronic here in California. You can't just put a Band-Aid on it. I know we have programs within the city that are very good. They help assist homeless folks, but it doesn't take care of the problem. And tiny homes would.
She says she plans on advocating for city council to make tiny homes a priority this year. ABC 10 reached out to the city manager's office as well as the West Sacramento mayor. Both declined to comment for the story.
And Becca is with us now. Becca, I know that tiny homes, the cost can vary, but how much money are we talking compared to a traditional house?
Sure. Well, James Roberts, who owns that tiny home company you saw, Tainer, he said that, living in a tiny home can easily cut housing costs in half, although it does depend on how much you want to spend on the interior of your tiny home. You can make it real fancy and spend a lot of money there. You can be a little bit more bare bones. But, he does add tiny home living isn't for everyone. It can fulfill, however, a variety of needs, whether someone wants to cut costs, be more mobile, reduce their carbon footprint, or downsize their housing. We should note that Tainer is no longer accepting new orders for tiny homes. People might see this story and get excited, but they're moving into the design and consulting in the tiny home space.
And we really know that tiny homes have really been looked at as a solution to help those who are unhoused, right?
Yeah, Alex, all over the country, I've seen examples of cities, counties, and nonprofit organizations turn to tiny homes to shelter the unhoused. Even right here in Sacramento County, we want to show you these are pallet sleep cabins. We've reported on them. They're considered more shelters than tiny homes. This is on Florin Road near the intersection with Power Inn Road. This site is designed to include some 100 pallet sleeping cabins housing a total of up to 125 people. Since some of the cabins are made to house partners, the county hopes to open this site in late spring.
And before we go, I do want to talk about our digital producer, Ayanna Williams. She found this story from really boots on the ground reporting. So talk a little bit about how you guys even found this.
Yeah, Ayanna's beat is West Sacramento. She watches every single city council meeting. She found this story by listening to the public comment section. She heard this woman come up meeting after meeting talking about how she was having troubles living on her own land in her own tiny home. So Ayanna dug into it, and here we are with the story.
All right, Becca, thank you so much. All right, on to our next story. Representatives from PG&E went to criminal court in Shasta County today facing manslaughter charges involving the deadly Zog fire. We explain what went down on the first day of court right after the break. PG&E, the state's largest utility, is charged with crimes in Shasta County for starting a deadly fire 2 years ago. And it's one of the most important criminal cases in California right now. ABC 10's Brendan Ritteman is in court for us in Redding tonight.
PG&E's manslaughter hearings are expected to go on for weeks, bringing new evidence to light about the origin of the Zog fire. That fire killed 4 people in the hills above Redding. The dead included 8-year-old Fayla McLeod and her mom, Elena. Their pickup truck burned while trying to escape their home.
No one should go through that.
Zach McLeod is trying to find his footing in an unexpected new life, a life without his wife and daughter. He wants to see PG&E brought to justice for starting this fire.
It might not have been intentional, I understand that. No one came after my family with guns and weapons, but there was negligence involved.
Prosecutors agree. They charged PG&E with 4 felony counts of manslaughter for the deaths and dozens of other charges for starting the Zog fire and a few smaller fires in Shasta County. PG&E has 91 prior felony convictions on its record after causing 2 deadly disasters, the 2018 Camp Fire and the 2010 San Bruno gas explosion. PG&E paid a few $1 million of fines in each case, but no one went to prison.
This isn't one person, it's a corporation. And as you know, that's a big difference when it comes to the criminal side. But I really do hope that it does affect some change and can keep people safer.
The surviving family members need to have their day in court. The community needs to know that this is something we're not going to tolerate.
PG&E's legal team wouldn't comment, but in opening statements, they denied the company's behavior amounts to criminal negligence. Defense attorney Brad Bryan said the issues behind the Zog fire come down to judgment calls made by PG&E tree workers. Judgment calls are not crimes, he said, claiming PG&E did all it could to prevent the fire.
I disagree with that. They didn't remove the tree. That's humanly possible. They were aware of the tree and it should have been removed. It was not removed. Because of the systemic problems within PG&E when it comes to their vegetation management.
Only one witness testified on day one, CAL FIRE arson investigator Darren Stewart. We can't play his testimony for you. The court banned us from recording audio. But he described the pine tree that fell on the power lines as an obvious safety problem. The tree had a large open wound at its base. Arborists found it had been that way for years, putting the tree at risk of falling in a windstorm, just like it did on the day of the fire. It's why he recommended criminal charges against PG&E, which has a duty to operate power lines safely.
And again, that was Brandon Ritteman reporting. Coming up, imagine that the rain that we saw last week didn't stop for weeks with one atmospheric river after another. I mean, really, it's not as unlikely as you think. Our week-long mega flood series continues right after this. The impacts of a changing climate present themselves in different ways, and one of them is the increased risk of catastrophic flooding in California. So imagine the string of storms that we just went through, but with 2 or 3 times as much moisture. These photos were taken today in Tracy. Now, tonight, Monica Woods is looking back on the Spillway crisis in Oroville nearly 6 years ago and looking ahead at what the state is doing to prepare for the worst-case scenario.
All of our tools were submerged underwater.
It looks like a bomb went off there.
Imagine the biggest storm you have ever been through.
He had to chainsaw his way out his front door.
Cold, hard rain has local creeks and rivers running high.
All this came underneath the doors. What if the rain didn't stop?
A levee breaks, and now your neighborhood is taking on water.
In Sacramento region alone, there's over 514,000 people that are protected by these levees.
Studies suggest that Sacramento is actually one of the top 10 in the nation most at risk for flooding due to rivers.
The most intense atmospheric river storms are likely to become significantly more intense.
And certainly the Spillway incident was one of those instances where we did not have time.
Are we prepared? This is Mega Flood.
We're already in a world where the likelihood of a catastrophic flood has doubled at any given year. And that's the kind of thing that keeps people like us up at night.
Brian Johnson is a member of the Central Valley Flood Protection Board. Their mission, updating the state's plan to keep us all safe from catastrophic flooding.
People talk about how we may be overdue for the big one for an earthquake in Northern California. That's probably true for the big flood as well.
A flood event that would dwarf the record-breaking water year of 2017, when the Oroville Reservoir couldn't hold the amount of water coming in from rain and Sierra snowmelt.
In February of that year, we had a series of storms coming into the lake. We were operating the lake like we normally do to hold back some of the water and then release it gradually into the Feather River when we found the damage in the spillway. Unfortunately, it was damage that was too large to repair and really resulted in a failure of this spillway.
Making it nearly impossible to release enough water from the rapidly rising lake, putting pressure on the country's tallest dam, standing over 70 stories high. The risk of massive flooding growing by the hour for people living in the valley below.
Well, me as a mom, the first thing I thought was, get my family out of there. You know, it was very scary at that moment.
One set of parents down the street, the other 20 minutes away. Mariana and David moving quickly.
It was mayhem for a while, man. People were going crazy here.
And a life they worked so hard to build, hanging in the balance.
I mean, friends here, I mean, you know, our house where I was born at. I mean, it's just, like, for example, we built this ourselves here. We put the trailer here, we put the porch here. I mean, things we worked or, you know, tears, blood, and sweat type of deal into it. I mean, imagine all that going down. I mean, losing it.
You work so much, you just feel like somebody just took it away from you.
The Rodriguezes remembering the night they and nearly 200,000 others got the call for immediate evacuation. The state responding to reduce the risk of a repeat.
13 million pounds of reinforcing steel was put in place here. And then additionally at the emergency spillway over to the left here, we placed 750,000 cubic yards of concrete to help protect the hillside.
I'm walking on top of the country's tallest dam, holding back over 3.5 million acre-feet of water. Now, if this whole facility were to fail, it would send all of that water downhill, flooding areas like Oroville, Marysville, and even into Sacramento. The valley is a natural floodplain, sitting thousands of feet lower than our highest peaks. Snowmelt and runoff move downhill, filling reservoirs. When water is released, it keeps moving downstream to rivers, a dangerous place for accumulating water.
The Sacramento River as a whole is called a perched river, which means the flow line, the bottom of the river, in many cases is higher than the land that's on each side of it. So the river is actually higher than the surrounding land.
The only thing holding back this water are what we call levees.
In Sacramento region alone, there's over 514,000 people that are protected by these levees.
One break in the system can cause deadly and massive destruction, like these levee breaks in Yuba County from 1986 and 97.
The communities that would most likely be affected, it would be in the low-lying areas of the valley. They were effectively wetlands, and now they're being protected by levees.
Like Natomas, West Sacramento, the city of Sacramento, Stockton, Lathrop, and Manteca, all home to large, growing community developments. And that's why close to $8.3 billion is being spent on levee improvements through a federal civil works program.
By the funds that have been allocated, we've improved about 140 miles of the 300 miles, with about another 160 miles more to go.
Which will offer protection to about 1.1 million people and over $100 billion worth of assets. Near where the Sacramento and American rivers meet, another big project is underway to move water away from high-risk areas in Sacramento and Yolo counties.
This is the Lower Elkhorn Basin Levee Setback Project. We're setting back the existing Sacramento Bypass levee by approximately 1,500 feet and the Yolo Bypass levee by approximately 1,500 feet.
This will help alleviate downstream water flows by allowing more water to flow into beneficial areas for agriculture and the environment.
This project is being implemented in close coordination with another project coming shortly, the Sacramento Weir Widening Project.
Together, these will reduce the water surface elevation in the Sacramento River by as much as a foot, adding another layer of protection during big flood events. But these structural changes can only do so much in the face of climate change, with research showing California's risk of a megastorm doubling due to warming.
It will be a challenge for sure, because the infrastructure that was constructed back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, like the dams and levees, and the hydrology information that was available at the time at which those structures were designed is all of this.
Joe says this is a time of renaissance, though, with improving forecasts giving water managers like the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers new flexibility in a program called FIRO.
FIRO, Forecast Informed Reservoir Operations. And it's this idea that if you understand forecasted events better, if you can get better forecasts, then you can make better water management decisions.
Knowing when to keep water in and when to let water out.
We've made significant progress, but that progress isn't happening at a pace and scale that we know is needed. And with climate change, winning slowly is losing.
Well, Monica, we know our infrastructure was really put to the test these last few weeks. What worked? What didn't work?
Well, obviously with the flooding, that didn't work. So we still have areas of improvement, and you heard right there that we still have areas of levee improvements to be done, as well as partially with our reservoirs as well. So what's key here is the reservoirs had plenty of capacity to hold the water. We did let some water out at Folsom, and that's where one of the big sticking points is stop letting water out. But how do you do that without preventing flooding, right?
Yeah, and since we're in a drought, that's what everyone is asking. Is there a way to keep our neighborhoods safe while still holding on to all that water?
Okay, there's a couple of programs, and one of which is going to be the groundwater storage, and we're still working through the process of that. That's called SGMA, Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. That is something that is working on putting in place. So that will be taking surface water, putting it underground. One of the other big factors is FIRO. You heard it right there, Forecast Informed Reservoir Operations. What that's going to do, and it's being used on 3 places right now, Lake Mendocino, Prado Dam in Southern California, and then also in the Yuba Feather River Basin. That will be taking better forecasts and allowing us to hold more water in these bigger years, because we're not so afraid that we're going to get flooding from those big storage.
Storms,
Yeah.
All right, Monica, thank you so much. We appreciate it. We'll be right back after this. Back in September, we brought you our special episode, Honored Ashes, Stories Untold, about Sacramento's deadliest plane crash that sadly did take the lives of 22 people. And this weekend, we will be screening our special at the unveiling of the Sacramento Regional Fire Museum's new exhibit about this plane crash that happened at Farrell's Ice Cream. We would love for you to join us for this screening. We'll also have a Q&A session with some of those first responders and also some people from UC Davis. Again, that is this Saturday at noon. All you have to do is head to ABC10 abc10.com/tothepoint for all the info on how you can attend. Hope you have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow. Stay safe. Hey, it's Alex. Just wanted to say thank you so much for watching. I really love hearing from everyone, and I hope that you'll stay in touch. Reach out to me on Facebook at AlexBellTV, or you can email me at tothepoint@abc10.com, or you can even send me a text message at 916-321-3310.